one of the key takeaways, and there were several, but the one that at least stood out to me was, very limited medical resources. So, of course, the word from our friends to the north is please stay vigilant. Likewise for us, and of course, we offer our prayers to our friends up there. Our next interview continues with the regional and local, global, as it were, impact of Chamorros and the Chamorro diaspora, how our people have moved around, and behavior patterns and whatnot. So we had Kevin Lee on last year. He was undertaking the 2021 Guahan survey, and we have him on the show right now to talk about the data gathering process and hopefully what some of the results are. So, Kevin, belated Happy New Year, and thanks for coming back on the show, man. I would dare say that what you have behind you is either some really incredible art or that is a amazing Kanban board.
Yeah, that it is definitely decoration that I did not ask for, and it comprises a series of Post-it notes of reminders to do things. That is all my partner's fault. But yes, Suzu's Malasik for having me back on. This is really
there you go. Well, they say like a messy office is the mark of a very productive guy. So and you have certainly been busy, over the past few months because you did actually conduct a survey. I believe it was from July to August, right?
July to August, that's right. We had a 1 month long outreach period.
Mm-hmm. And how many respondents did you get?
We got a total of 15 respondents, 1,106 of them which met the 3 survey criteria, which is to identify as Chamorro or other cognate kind of terms, however it's spelled, 18 plus, and a full-time resident in Guahan.
Okay. And maybe if you can, just pedal us back a little bit and get us up to speed on exactly what the intent of the survey, hope to infer about, what was the line of questioning, and and then we'll get into actually what some of the results are, if you're at liberty to kind of talk about that.
Absolutely. So the intention behind the survey was very simple and really humble. We were looking at a lot of the research on Chamorros, and we found that there's not a lot of research on what Chamorros want in their everyday lives, mm-hmm. and what their dreams are, what their aspirations are. A lot of the research out there tends to be on, really about the deficits of our community and our people, about public health disparities, about being wanted to create a platform where just had a
Okay, so it seems Kevin might be having a little bit of a. Oops! Oh, there you go. Okay, we lost you for a second, Kev. Your connection kind of wigged out a little bit. We'll blame the snow. We'll always blame the snow. Yeah, but what I was able to take away from that is you were saying the survey was kind of just took away from the fact that there isn't a lot of data to date on Chamorros as far as maybe perhaps migratory patterns, behavior. And this is one of many studies I know that we've talked about on this show, because the University of Guam has actually undertaken several similar surveys like your own, dealing with the effects of betel nut chewing, the effects of the pandemic and coronavirus on our people, and everything like that. Have you in any way maybe collaborated with some of your colleagues in that regard to kind of say oh, I see you guys are doing a survey too, this is what I'm doing, we might want to put our heads together in that one?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we're definitely very much open to collaboration, and the hope is that researchers in the University of Guam, Chamorro researchers, allies in Guahan will continue undertaking similar kinds of research endeavors. But with this particular project, we mostly collaborated with community stakeholders rather than other researchers. But mm-hmm. I think that's definitely something for down the line.
Okay. Now, as much work, Kevin, as it goes into, preparing the survey itself, administering it, kind of guiding the respondents along and everything, the actual data gathering is the easy part. Once you have all those, all the participation and all the data and everything like that, then you got to crunch the numbers, and then you have to assemble and compile and everything like that. So take me through that phase of the survey. How was it actually putting that together, and then what did you do with the data?
Absolutely. So we haven't done anything with the data. The only thing that we have done is we've released all of the data in a publicly accessible format on our website,
Okay.
Which is guamstudy.org/results. And there we've divided the results into two segments. One is the main community report comprising of all 18 plus CHamoru full-time residents of Guam who responded to the survey, and there's 1,103 respondents there, and separately a diaspora report. We really wanted to recognize that the CHamoru community, we're around the world. We're in Guam, we're in CNMI, we're in the continent and beyond, and 45 CHamoru's who don't live in Guam full-time responded to the survey, and we didn't want to silence that, and so we had a separate space for them. But I think right now, our central priority is really to make sure that this survey doesn't stay in the ivory tower of academia. It doesn't stay, at my institution. It doesn't stay in California or Boston. That it's really incorporated into the everyday lives of people back home. And so I think in that regard, we have two small asks. One is to just share the survey results widely. And again, it's available guamstudy.org/results. Talk about the results with your family and friends. We really do believe as a team that this study means nothing unless it's incorporated into everyday conversations about our island and our future. And second, send feedback. This survey really is only one step towards understanding what everyday CHamoru's want for our island's future. And there's so much more work to be done. Like Jason, you were just saying, there's been a lot of work in this area, and I hope there continues to be even more work that spurs out of this survey and the longstanding history of work that's been done on these issues.
And
if you have thoughts, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and kudos to you, because I remember the last time we spoke when we had you on this show, like I was saying, here at KUM, we're big proponents of open source and, and sharing information. And you were of the same mind, and you're like, yeah, we don't want to kind of just bottle this up and say it belongs to a particular entity, or it can be licensed, or it can be purchased and everything like that. This is basically about us, and as such, it does, and probably because there is such a lack of information of this nature, it deserves to be spread around, and also that you've actually spread it between the diaspora and between, like other groups. I really appreciate how you guys have provided that stratification.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for saying that. We just didn't want to silence everybody. And again, the survey really emerged out of a need to understand, what the everyday people and CHamoru's in particular in Guam were thinking, but people were responding from across the world, especially in the continent. And so we just thought that it would be really important to not only capture their voices and their opinions, but also to make that publicly accessible.
Okay. Now, if I may, Kev, if I can just geek out for a minute, because you're making this the data so widely available and open that even high schoolers, undergraduates can use this for projects and everything like that, and they just have to cite you as they should. What is the nature of the data? Was your questioning mostly open-ended? Was it multiple choice? Was it like a numerical range, or how was the format? Because I'm thinking if I was going to use this for like a cool project that we could do for KUM, I just want to know before I start cleaning the data and everything like what I'm working with.
Absolutely. So we asked a total of 3 substantive questions. 33 substantive questions in the survey, 6 of which are open-ended. And so. And there were, and for all the different kinds of multiple choice questions, there were like different kinds of formats. Like sometimes it's like a Likert scale from like strongly disagree to strongly agree. Sometimes it's a yes, no question. So there were a good range of questions in there. And it's really easy to just like pluck out the figures from the community report to start thinking about like what this means, like what this leaves out, to really ask questions of the data. But if you want access to the actual data set, then feel free to reach out to guahansurvey@gmail.com or Jason, just text me. And I think we're more than happy to provide that data in collaboration with local researchers, with media, et cetera. I think the most important thing is to get it out there and to get people really asking questions of this data. One of the reasons why we didn't provide this data set openly for people to manipulate is because we had concerns about anonymity.
Sure.
There are some, right, like sometimes, for example, like for our non-binary and transgender respondents, for our Manamko that are age 75 plus, like it's sometimes that information can be a little bit identifiable because there are only a handful of them who responded. And so that's the only reason why we didn't make it open source, but we certainly are committed to making it public and are very interested in also collaborating with media and local researchers and advocates to translate the data into more publicly accessible materials. I mean, having a report up on the website sounds accessible, but not everybody knows how to navigate a computer. Not everybody is interested in like navigating, you know, a 40-page report on a website.
Well, you're talking to the guy who does that on a Saturday night, you know, just for hawks and giggles. So like, you know, you're speaking my love language, bro.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But I think for data nerds like us, you know, having a report out and seeing those numbers, it's really exciting. But I think there's a lot of work that still needs to be done in collaboration with local folks to make it even more accessible.
Okay, and you know, I do appreciate that because you know we one of our reporters is actually just graduated from Stanford about 6 months ago, and he's actually, you know, he graduated from Stanford's graduate journalism program, and he's got a background in data visualization. And because you guys have, you know, numerical data plus the open-ended questions, I can totally see us, you know, we've actually been talking about this. Can we find some data viz project that we can really sink our teeth into and make all sorts of cool 3D charts, augmented reality charts, you know, like really stuff that can really, like, you know, have a visual impact and say like this is what the nature of our people over time, and you know, comparatively this is how the diaspora, you know, maybe changes and everything like that. So you know, like totally jazzed about this.
Absolutely. I mean, let's definitely talk more about that. I think that sounds incredibly exciting. I think it'll be difficult to do comparisons between like the diaspora and like full-time residents of Guam with CHamoru, because we weren't really targeting the diaspora, and so our sampling methodology there is it's much more limited than what we did for.
Since you brought that up, Kev, I wanted to ask about that. Like, and maybe you just answered the question, but like, at least on a high level, like a 50,000-foot glance and everything like that, were there any substantial major differences between the diaspora, people like, you know, people of Chamorro descent, but you know, they reside in other places of the world, and people like who live here? Was there anything that like just really stark differences?
I think we definitely still need to like leap into that analysis because that gets a little bit complicated. But what I will say is that across the board, our survey did not adopt a representative sample for the population because we wanted it to be very much community driven. And so a couple different populations are unfortunately underrepresented, and that includes just thinking about the respondents who live in Guam. CHamoru's in the South are Menamko, age 65 plus, transgender but non-binary genderqueer CHamoru's, and working class CHamoru's with a high school diploma or less are all unfortunately not as well represented as we would like. And I think that's really important when considering the data, whatever you're doing with it, whether you're like looking at the diaspora versus locals or just looking at the locals. I think it's really important to consider that these voices are very much marginalized.
Excellent. Well, you know, again, I got to give you all, you know, all the praise in the world because, you know, our people have been really, really lacking this. And the only real resources we've had is, you know, for the past 30 years, if we wanted to undertake some project like this, we'd have to go to the government. You know, the formats of the data weren't always necessarily amenable to maybe modern, you know, data viz techniques or, you know, like machine learning or stuff like that. More recently, we'd have to tap like Wikipedia, which may or may not be, you know, like timely enough. You know, the census like data may be off a little bit. And so the fact that you've actually compiled this and everything like that is of huge significance to our people. And, you know, again, what we can do from academic standpoints, public sector, you know, the private sector may want to, you know, put together like neat stuff for marketing purposes. Who knows, you know, for strategic planning, risk assessment. So, you know, you have actually created amazing opportunity, you know, for this community.
I mean, it was definitely a collaborative effort, and all credit, again, always goes to the entire research team. It was a very collaborative effort in conjunction with community stakeholders. And so it was definitely not just me. I'm a very, very, very small part of it. But absolutely, I think it's all very exciting. And I think it's all very exciting, and there's a lot of opportunity to keep building on this work.
Well, and I would say you're probably as a surveyor, you're probably your own best respondent, because certainly you've not lost your Chamorro humility. Giving all the credit to your team.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I think like my aunties like have made it very, very clear that that's very important. And also like, I mean, I think all of our families have really been instrumental in all of this. Something that we found out through the outreach process, for instance, is that it was really critical to have a family champion in every single village. And the villages where we weren't able to get a family champion, for example, we were struggling a little bit in Malesso at the beginning, and then it became a little bit better. And then in Alahan, we never really quite reached it. But you know, it was really the geographical representation of our families, of Chamorro families on the research team that really drove all of this. So it really is important to credit them.
Okay, and I know you've kind of said, you know, you want to leave the actual conclusions of the data to, you know, to the projects or the products, you know, depending on how it's used, you know, to third parties and everything like that. But could you give us a little bit of just a high level of what the respondents tended to respond with?
Absolutely. So just focusing on the report with full-time residents of Guam, I think there are like four big takeaways that I could highlight. So number one, Chamorro connection to culture, history, and language is very much vibrant and thriving. 4 in 5 respondents report that they have spent time trying to find out more about Chamorro history, traditions, and culture, and around half of the respondents are active in Chamorro organizations, social events, cultural activities. The second big point is that Chamorros seem to feel a great deal of pride and belonging in being Chamorro. 9 in 10 respondents, this overwhelming majority, feel good about their Chamorro identity, and 85% of respondents feel a sense of belonging to the community. The third big point is that Chamorros do feel like they are second-class citizens in the United States. Almost 3/4 of respondents consider Guam to be occupied by the United States, and 3/4 of them also feel like they do not have the same rights as US citizens who are residents of one of the 50 states. The last point is that Chamorros feel like Guam's relationship to the US military should change in some way. 2/3 of respondents do not support the construction of the US military firing range above Retidium Point on the Texan, and nearly 2/3 of respondents support the US military paying rent to Guam to lease the land for military bases. I think, so those are the 4 high-level takeaways. And I think, you know, part of our sampling strategy was to make sure that we reached a range of Chamorros across, you know, geography, demographic characteristics, and their political attitudes. We succeeded in some areas, we didn't succeed in other areas, but the respondents that we did obtain like tended to be very heterogeneous, and they tended to be extremely varied in their responses. But these are like the 4 big takeaways where we see Chamorros coming together in a really big way around these issues.
Fascinating. And again, this is just scratching, or the tip of the iceberg. I'm mixing like my analogies here, but just the tip of the iceberg. And you know, what you can do again with this data is be able to use it for your own research, your own projects, and everything like that. So so Kevin and his team there have done our community a great service. And you know, Kevin, this is actually part 2 of our interview with you. Part 1 was talking about the survey is about to begin. This being part 2, we're talking about like what happened. I'd love to have you back on for like part 3, and we just talk about, okay, these are all the neat and interesting ways that people are actually using this data, again, across industry, across government, public sector, private sector, military, you know, what have you, and everything like that. We'd love to get you on in a couple months and just find out, you know, the scaffolding that you've provided, if you will, how it has actually given rise to more worthwhile endeavors.
That would be such a privilege, and that would be incredible. I think something that we'd definitely be interested in talking about more is, you know, those data visualization projects. Like, how do we like look at all of these critical questions that everyday Chamorros have about themselves, about the future of their island, and just sort of providing those materials so that people can see, oh, like this is sort of one tool that we have to understand and gauge the pulse of our people. It's not a perfect tool, but it is one tool that we have, and I think that'll be really, really exciting and incredibly valuable, much more valuable than the survey itself.
And it is a very necessary springboard that we have never had before. So the fact that you've actually provided this again, you know, can't say this enough, and everything is very, very worthwhile. So final plug before we let you go, because, you know, you put in a lot of work to this. You deserve to take a break, take a breather, you know, maybe have a nice cup of joe, pat yourself on the back, or begin the next big thing, right? So give a final push about where people can find the data and where they can, discover more.
Absolutely. So you can go to our website, guamstudy.org /results to see the results. Our results are separated into two big portions. Like one is the community report that has 1,103 respondents from Guam, and all summary statistics for the closed-ended questions. All the short answers are anonymized and provided up there. And the other piece is the diaspora report. And if you have any thoughts, suggestions, feedback, please feel free to reach out to guahansurvey@gmail.com. And we'll be sure to incorporate that into future work and share that with other researchers who are interested in building on this, data visualization, folks who are interested in making sure that these become accessible to the community.
All right, well done. And Kevin, I must say, hopefully when we have you back on the next time, we hope to see that pretty substantial to-do list behind you, whittled down just like a tad.
Hopefully it'll be gone, hopefully. But it's just my Aussie again, seriously. This is such a privilege.
We thank you for your work. All right, stay safe, man. Thanks once again. All right, everybody, please stay tuned because the link will continue. There's much more show coming up right after.
The KUAM Podcast Network is back and on demand, featuring a great variety of podcasts from our island and region, including culture, lifestyle, awareness, crime, politics, commentary, comedy, and entertainment. Available on most streaming platforms. The KUAM Podcast Network. Subscribe and listen now.